Today in the EU, everybody wants Greenland. But what does Greenland want? Greenland, the world's largest island, has come into the limelight after Donald Trump suggested buying it in late December. The suggestion has also thrown the government of Copenhagen into a bit of a political quagmire, because Denmark, like the United States, wants to maintain close ties with a geographically convenient and resource-rich island. Technically, Greenland has fallen under the realm of Denmark for more than 2 centuries, but it has its own representatives and institutions. So what do Greenlanders want out of all of this? And how are Trump's ambitions shaping the Greenlandic political debate? Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Giada Santana, and this is Today in the EU. Our politics reporter, Magnus Lund Nielsen, left last Tuesday for Greenland.
And I'm about to embark on a just about 5-hour flight from Copenhagen to Nuuk, where I'm going to be covering Greenlandic politics, EU relations and US relations for the next week in these quite tumultuous times. Hej.
Den her til at starte med, så har du navnet.
Ja, navnet, det kommer lige der.
Magnus Nielsen, tak skal du have. God tur.
So I just ran into my high school friend Lucas. He's a pilot with Air Greenland. He's flying all the domestic flights in Greenland. The great thing about Greenland is that there is really no sort of infrastructure between the cities. If you want to go from, say, Nuuk, the biggest city, the capital, to the second largest city, Sisimiut, it's around 300 or 400 kilometers. But there's no way of driving there. Either you sail or you fly. And also, I just ran into Maya Tegeli. We used to go to high school together 10 years ago, and now she's working freelance, I think, for the New York Times, and she's also going to Nuuk. It's kind of telling that, although I think we're the only Brussels media represented in Nuuk, there's definitely a lot of media attention around Greenland these days.
From the mining industry to MAGA, we talk about everything that went down. Hello, Magnus, and welcome back to the podcast.
Hello.
So you've been reporting in Greenland since the beginning of last week. You were supposed, or at least we were hoping you would join us in Brussels for this episode, but you're still very much on the ground because of a snowstorm. So I guess let's start from the beginning. What have you been up to since touching down on the island's capital? What's the atmosphere like?
Yeah, so I've been here in Nuuk, Greenland, the island's capital, for this is my 8th or 9th day here now. I got here on kind of a tense day. I got here the same day that the famous Nelk Boys, these American MAGA YouTubers, as well as another MAGA YouTuber, Nick Shirley, was in town.
I just ran into, or just walked past, kind of ironically, Nick Shirley. Nick Shirley is a big, I guess, journalist. He's had some controversial takes. He's already posted videos from Nuuk, Greenland, so I knew he was in town. He posted a video earlier today with kids here in Nuuk saying that they want Trump to buy Greenland.
It was kind of interesting to then touch down and actually see them on the street. And what happened was kind of telling of how tense the atmosphere was when I got here.
What happened?
So what happened was that I saw Nick Shirley on the street. He was vox popping some guy. And then I pull out my phone, actually in order to just record something for this very podcast, saying, well, I just came across Nick Shirley. And as I'm speaking English into my phone, some guy, I presume a local guy, comes up to me and is like, "Are you American?"
Right.
And I instantly turn off my recording.
I just walked past a guy called Nick. Undskyld. Nej, overhovedet ikke.
and go like, no, not at all. And then once he realizes I'm Danish, he just turns on his heel and leaves. And I'm trying to like holler at him like, what's the issue here? And he clearly doesn't want to talk to me, but he definitely did want to have a word with me in case I was American.
Right.
And I think it goes to show that the atmosphere here has been kind of tense. I'm Danish myself, and as many other Danes, I have sort of not only friends here, but also have family ties in Greenland. And so I've also been here before. And this time around, it's definitely different. It's more tense. You have to imagine that Greenlanders, at least as I have come to know them, is one, firstly, a very proud nation, but it's also a fairly humble one at that. So this kind of attention is new. It's outside the normal.
Right.
And my reading of the room here in Nuuk is that it's not necessarily always super appreciated. I think to a large extent, the attention that has been brought upon Greenland by way of Trump's new calls to acquire the island, how ludicrous that might even sound, is a positive for the island's independence movement. The wish for independence is shared by a very large majority of the inhabitants of Greenland.
Yeah, that's exactly something I wanted to talk about. It's interesting how Trump's declarations have reignited a popular wish for secession. As a Dane, you are quite familiar with Greenland's relationship, of course, with mainland Denmark. What's the sentiment in Denmark? You've already talked about how people in Greenland are feeling about it, but politically, how's the situation evolving, if there's any developments?
I mean, first thing I should say about this is that whatever my opinion might be and whatever the average Dane opinions might be of what Greenland should be doing is not relevant to this discussion, because as I think a lot of Danes also appreciate, is that the future of Greenland is something that is being decided in Greenland and by Greenlanders themselves.
Yeah.
But that, of course, doesn't change the fact that we have like Danish diplomacy in full-blown crisis mode right now. We had the Danish foreign minister a few weeks ago initially saying, well, this is not necessarily a crisis. And then with Trump's renewed calls for this, he changed his stance and said that this is probably the biggest foreign policy crisis Denmark has found itself in for many, many, many generations.
Oh, wow. So let's start from the beginning. Donald Trump first manifested his interest in the island during his first mandate, a wish that he underlined again in late December. His son, Trump Jr., made a surprise visit to the island, news that you broke for Euractiv. And in the meantime, he was been speaking to politicians and academics. How do they see this whole situation?
So, since I got here, I have been talking to more than a dozen Greenlandic scholars, activists, politicians, decision makers at different levels. And this whole saga came about, or was at least ignited by, as you say, Donald Trump Jr.'s surprise visit in the capital of Nuuk now a few weeks ago. Greenland is an autonomous territory under the Danish realm and is on the path to independence at some point. That goes without saying. When I talk to people here, as I said, this renewed interest really has helped ignite this whole independence debate.
So as you bumped into MAGA influencers, you also talked to a Greenlandic one that lately became outspoken about Greenland's independence.
Yeah, so the other day I had breakfast with Rupanuk Olsen, better known under her online alias Q's Greenland. Just on TikTok alone, I believe she has around the following 10 times the size of the population of Greenland. She has around 500,000 followers.
That's impressive.
It really is. And she talks about Greenlandic issues. She talks about Greenlandic culture. And a few days ago, she announced that she is now also running for parliament. She had hinted at this before, but she had said that she would do that later at some point at the next general election. But as she told me, this is the time. This time around, within the next 4 years, there are going to be some very crucial decisions made about Greenland in Greenlandic politics. She talked to me about how she's running for this pro-independence party, Nalarak, who essentially wants to get the process of independence started yesterday, as soon as possible. Rupanuk herself, she says that in 2035, that's when she believes Greenland will be independent. But this also just goes to show that even the most ardent supporters of Greenlandic independence, don't believe that independence will happen necessarily within the next 4 years. And that is kind of what it would take for Trump to take over Greenland or enter into some sort of free association agreement with Greenland. Earlier this year, in his New Year's speech, the Greenlandic Prime Minister, Mute Beede, said that we need to take another step. And he was essentially hinting at possibly a referendum on independence, maybe within the next political mandate that is due to start by April this year, when the Greenlanders go to their next general election.
So this could happen quite soon.
Depends on who you ask. I have been talking to some very pro-independence politicians here in Greenland, and what they think is the path forward is essentially that the whole maneuver starts with Greenland claiming independence, and then we have to figure out the details afterwards, where the incumbent government is more of the perception that, well, we should figure out the details and figure out what does an independent Greenland look like. Who do we look to for sources, for health services, for access to education? An independent Greenland would still be contingent on some services coming from the outside. And so there are essentially two different approaches to it. There are the pro-independence movement or the most pro-independence movement who say, well, let's do this yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are the more cautious approach, which is that of the incumbent government.
More after the break about the politics around Greenland's mineral resources. I'm interested in understanding better what's happening internally in Greenland's political debate. I can imagine how the process of independence and this whole political turmoil around secession could make Greenland more vulnerable to acquisition. For now, Greenland has announced it is open to collaborating with Washington on defense and exploring its mining resources. At the same time, the Prime Minister, Mute Beede, is affiliated to a left-wing party, and he won parliamentary elections on a platform of halting a metal mining project on environmental grounds. So I wonder, how is this political incident Trump-related, and the way the Prime Minister is handling it impacting his political clout?
So over the past couple of days, I've had two interviews that was interesting in that regard. I met with the Greenlandic Minister for Mineral Resources, Giada Santana Nielsen, and she said that obviously there is a huge deposit of rare earth minerals in the subsoil of Greenland. The issue here is that we are in a very remote part of the world, and infrastructure for the vast majority of Greenland's 44,000 kilometer long coastline is not really a thing. So you have to greenfield the whole thing, meaning essentially you're starting with a greenfield. You have to build everything from, well, houses to, well, sanitary facilities to health facilities to a canteen. Everything has to be built from the ground up. And you have to find a way how to sort of move your mined minerals from point A to point B. So it's a huge endeavor. And that also goes to say that any investment into Greenlandic mining is a long-term investment.
Mm.
And I also spoke with Sven Hardenberg.
Jeg kom ind i foråret for at hjælpe med at bygge bro.
Who is the advisor on behalf of the Australian company who had their mining license revoked, and that is the exact case that you're referring to.
Right.
As he see it, this is a conflict of arbitration. As they see it, the Greenlandic government didn't hold up to their part of the deal. But politically, this is interesting because, as you say, the incumbent prime minister was elected on a mandate to essentially close down this mine. And as I have come to learn Greenlanders, it is also a people that is very close to nature. And so taking too big invasive action into the Greenlandic wildlife is something they're very cautious of.
Right.
That being noted, the reason why this specific mine was closed down was because it is very close to a settlement in the southern part of Greenland. And as I said, Greenland has 44,000 kilometers of coastline. So the fact that they've managed to find a place where there actually live people is kind of impressive.
What are the chances?
That's kind of my point. It just goes to say that while this is definitely a politically toxic issue, it doesn't necessarily need to create a precedent where this is going to be also an issue for future mining projects as well. Because frankly, if you find a place where you want to mine in Greenland, there are very, very slim risks that you're gonna hit a place where there are people living close by.
Right, I see. And now the issues is way clearer, actually. However, as you say, I wonder if Greenlanders are opposed to the extraction of rare materials besides this specific project, or this project was the issue.
The thing of it is that this issue had, as I see it from sort of the activist environmental point of view, had two issues. One thing is that this would be a mine that would also be mining partly for uranium.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there would then be uranium dust in the neighborhood. And that brings it to the second point. And in the neighborhood, there is a village. So the local population would and you have sheep farmers in this southern part of Greenland. They would maybe risk that their sheep would be contaminated by or be exposed for radiation. But that's not a general point of sort of mining in Greenland.
Mm-hmm.
The day before yesterday, I attended a public hearing on a new mine, also in the southern part of Greenland, but only 100 kilometers south from here, which they're going to be mining for materials they're going to use in fiberglass. And that looks to be a pretty sort of smooth sailing project. It's in a region where there have already been actually a Rubin mine just recently. It's fairly far from the nearest settlement. And the nearest settlement would probably also benefit from this mine in the sense that, well, they could employ local residents. I think, and also maybe put their money in the local supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, right now, there is a vast, unharvested, untapped potential in the Greenlandic mining sector. As I've come to understand, there are around 2 or 3 active or even just semi-active mines in Greenland right now, which is obviously not a lot considering that you have this vast deposit of minerals in the Greenlandic subsoil.
And now thinking of possible scenarios ahead, since Donald Trump took on the presidency, he's been issuing several executive orders. Things are developing at neck-breaking speed. So how do you see the United States policy towards Greenland developing, moving onward? And to put it bluntly, could it gain control of the island? And if yes, how could it go about it?
So as I see it, I don't think there's any legal way for US to gain control over Greenland within the next 4 years. But I say this now, and I risk looking like a fool in 3 years from now. But talking to people on the ground, and also just listening to what the Prime Minister of Greenland said at a press conference I was at yesterday, is that the Greenlanders want to be Greenlanders. They don't want to be Americans, and they don't want to be Danes.
Mm-hmm.
And so down the line, I think what could happen is that an independent Greenland would do maybe sort of a 2-way free association agreement, that you were reliant on Denmark for some of the social services, as I mentioned, health, education, and while being reliant on the US for defense. But this whole narrative that Trump has been peddling, that they need Greenland for access to the Greenlandic subsoil, doesn't really make any sense all the while that they can do that already.
Mm-hmm.
The Greenlandic authorities have done quite a lot, and this is a prerogative that fall under Greenlandic authority, have done quite a lot to sell Greenland as a mining business case. But again, it comes back to this: mining is just a very, very, especially in this part of the world, a very complicated endeavor because you have to build everything from scratch.
Yeah. Thank you, Magnus.
Thank you.
This was Euractiv's podcast, Today in the EU. Sound design by Miriam Sanz de Tejada, research and production by Charles Cohen. Visit Euractiv to stay on top of the latest news and sign up for our newsletters. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite streaming platforms. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. It will really help us spread the word about our work. See you tomorrow. As part of our commitment to accuracy, inclusion, and transparency, Euractiv is part of the Trust Project.